In 1973, in Gyeongju, an ancient city nestled in the southeastern corner of the Korean peninsula, routine construction work to improve the city's drainage system was underway, and in the process, an event occurred where time, which had been sleeping within a pile of dirt for thousands of years, was accidentally revealed to the world. At the time, the laborers and archaeologists merely guessed that it might be part of a forgotten grave, never anticipating that a puzzle piece of colossal history penetrating the Eurasian continent would be discovered within that soil. This small and humble tomb, named Gyeorim-ro tomb number 14, did not possess a massive mound fit for a king, nor was it a conspicuous location that would become a flashy target for grave robbers, allowing it to maintain its silence for a long time. As the dust settled after careful brushing, the artifacts revealed were typical Silla pottery and ironware, yet one object found near the waist of the buried person emitted a brilliance so alien and radiant that it made all the experts present doubt their own eyes. It was a dagger covered in vivid red gems and gold, putting the long span of 1,500 years to shame, and it awoke from the cold earth while keeping the breath of the distant west intact, not the style of Silla. This golden dagger, carefully lifted by the excavation team, was not particularly long at 36 centimeters, but the craftsmanship contained within it displayed an aesthetic of a lineage fundamentally different from the metalworking techniques of Northeast Asia at the time. The surface of the dagger was filled with red garnets, and these gems were decorated with a variation of the granulation and cloisonné techniques, where gems are intricately set within gold frames, delivering a powerful visual shock as if red lava were flowing between rivers of gold. This decorative technique was distinctly different from the method common in Silla at the time, which involved cutting gold sheets or hammering them to create shapes instead. It was surprisingly similar to the cloisonné style popular in the Black Sea coast, the Eastern Roman Empire, or Celtic art around the 5th to 6th centuries. The tip of the sheath spread out in a trapezoidal shape, and inside it, curves reminiscent of the Western vine patterns, while also resembling the taeguk pattern, were elegantly interlocked, making the viewer intuitively feel that this object was born not in a workshop in Gyeongju, but by the hands of a craftsman in the Mediterranean or the Black Sea, 8,000 kilometers away. The discovery of this golden dagger came not merely as the excavation of a pretty artifact, but as decisive physical evidence proving that ancient Silla was a member of a global network far more extensive and dynamic than we imagine. To solve the mystery held by this dagger, we must first turn our gaze to the chaotic situation of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Between the 4th and 6th centuries, the estimated time and place of its creation. At that time, the Roman Empire was in a vortex of immense change, and as equestrian nomadic tribes, including the Huns, began a great migration from east to west. It was a period where the collision and fusion of civilizations occurred explosively, especially in the Black Sea coast and Eastern Europe regions. A colorful polychrome style using gold and gems was in vogue, which was a unique artistic trend born from the combination of Rome's sophisticated crafting techniques and the wild, flashy aesthetic of the nomadic tribes. Analysis suggests a very high possibility that the garnets used in the Gyeorim-ro golden dagger are raw stones mined in Eastern Europe or West Asia, and the Kingston-type dagger form perfectly matches the style worn by Germanic or Hunnic warriors to symbolize the authority of a ruler. Then, the question of through what route, and through whose hands, this distant foreign treasure flowed into a tomb in Silla. At the eastern end of the Eurasian continent remains a difficult problem requiring immense imagination from historians. When we think of the Silk Road, we often imagine a procession of merchants crossing the desert on camels. But the route this dagger traveled was likely the road of the endless grasslands located far to the north. The vast steppe region was like a highway for nomadic equestrian tribes, who moved like the wind, exchanging goods and information, and serving as a medium to deliver precious items from one end of the continent to the other, sometimes through war and plunder, and sometimes through diplomatic gift exchanges. This golden dagger was likely made in a workshop of the Eastern Roman Empire, fell into the hands of a powerful nomadic lord like the Huns or Avars, and then began a long journey passing through countless owners, crossing the steppes of Kazakhstan, over the Altai Mountains, and through the Mongolian plateau. In that process, this dagger would have been a weapon protecting someone's life, a supreme gift to forge an alliance between tribes for another, and glorious evidence as a trophy for yet another. This small dagger eloquently testifies that this grand journey of 8,000 kilometers was not just a geographical movement, but the very flow of a colossal history where different civilizations and cultures collided, mingled, and created something new. The country of Silla is easily misunderstood as a closed kingdom isolated in the southeastern corner of the Korean peninsula, but the numerous glass vessels and Western-style artifacts excavated from Silla tombs, including the Gyeorim-ro Golden Dagger, show that they were passionately communicating with the world through the sea and the grasslands. Gyeongju was a city overflowing with gold, enough to be called Gyeomsong, City of Gold at the time, and it had the aspect of a cosmopolitan international city where merchants and envoys from the West came and went, and exotic languages and customs mingled. Silla's ruling class, the royalty and aristocracy of the Merovingian period, actively collected and consumed rare and flashy items from distant lands to show off their authority, and this golden dagger must have been an object at the peak of such desire and ostentation. The owner of the dagger was likely a high-ranking noble or royalty of Silla, and the pride he felt when wearing this dagger at his waist may have stemmed from a civilizational superiority that he was connected to the center of the world, beyond simply owning a beautiful object. However, as this dagger was buried in the tomb, the story of its owner and the long journey the dagger had undergone were sealed in the soil, and we are merely piecing together the fragments of forgotten time through its splendid shell. Looking closely at the form of the dagger, the geometric patterns engraved on the handle show similarities to the knot patterns of the ancient Celts, and at the same time, points of connection can be found with the Tree of Life motif originating from Egyptian or Mesopotamian civilizations. This suggests that the artistic styles of the ancient world were not strictly divided by borders as we learn in textbooks, but were like organic living things that constantly changed and evolved by influencing each other. The red garnets decorating the surface of the lower part of the dagger and the sheath shine red and transparent like drops of blood, and each of these gems is the result of work requiring a high level of concentration that could never be completed without the artisan's extreme patience and precise hand movements. The process of erecting thin gold sheets to create compartments and precisely cutting and fitting gems into them is a level difficult to mimic. Even with modern precision machinery, allowing us to guess how high the technical achievements reached by artisans 1,500 years ago were. The very fact that such an ultra-precise artifact arrived in Silla traveling thousands of kilometers without damage is a miracle in itself. And we must remember that there were the hidden efforts and dedication of people who protected and transported this dagger during that journey. In Gyeorim-ro tomb number 14, other artifacts allowing us to guess the status of the buried person were excavated along with the golden dagger weaponry, such as saddle ornaments and quivers imply that he belonged to the warrior class or was a figure with military command. An interesting point is the fact that the remains of 2 people were found in this tomb, which deepens the mystery as it could indicate that the owner of the dagger was not alone, or it could show a glimpse of ancient funeral customs like sacrificial burial. If the owner of the dagger was an immigrant or mercenary from the West, he would have held this dagger, symbolizing his identity, in his arms until the end, closing his life in a strange land of the distant East, leaving his hometown behind. Conversely, if a Silla noble received this dagger as a gift through a diplomatic envoy, he would have sought to show off the expansiveness of the world he ruled and prove strong ties with allied nations through this exotic treasure. Either way, this golden dagger is speaking to us not as a simple ornament, but as a time capsule in which the life and death, power and desire, and meetings and partings of ancient people are condensed. The shock that the golden dagger delivered to us while glowing within the soil is solidified into a more definite reality through other foreign artifacts excavated from Silla tombs, specifically the glass vessels known as Roman glass. Even hard materials like stone or metal are bound to wear down and break during a journey of thousands of kilometers. So the fact that glass bowls, thin and transparent enough to break with a mere breath, arrived in Silla in intact condition across rugged mountain ranges and harsh deserts is an event close to a miracle in itself. The glass cups and bottles that poured out of royal-class tombs in Silla, such as Wangnam Daeshang or Cheonmashang, were made using the glass-blowing technique unique to the Roman Empire, which could not be mimicked by the technology of China or the Korean peninsula at the time. The brilliant hue of deep cobalt blue or the wave patterns added to the surface create an illusion, as if the blue sea of the Mediterranean and the lavish banquet halls of Rome were transported as they were, allowing us to guess the wonder Silla people of 1,500 years ago must have felt while pouring wine into these glass cups. These glass vessels are the crystallization of the desperate efforts of grand merchants who wrapped fragile items in layers of cotton or straw and carried them preciously in their arms, combined with the high discernment of the Silla ruling class, who recognized their value and paid a massive price, going beyond mere imported goods. In particular, the phoenix-shaped glass bottle discovered in Gyeongju, known as the Phoenix Head glass pitcher, is considered a highlight of Silk Road trade history for the originality of its form and the precision of its manufacturing technique. The trace of gold wire wrapped around the handle of the bottle to repair it is decisive evidence showing how preciously this item was treated even after arriving in Silla, and the affection of the owner, who wanted to use it even by mending the broken part with gold, remains intact, along with the possibility that these glass products entered through the northern steppe route. The possibility that they entered via the sea route through Southeast Asia and southern China is also being raised simultaneously, suggesting that ancient Silla was a terminus where the land and maritime Silk Roads met and a new stopover. Silla's Seorabeol was likely not the land of morning calm we commonly imagine, but a dynamic international city overflowing with rare items brought by merchants from various countries, where strange languages mixed with Persian and Sogdian could be heard in the marketplaces. The Golden Dagger and Roman glass eloquently demonstrate that Silla was deeply incorporated into the colossal logistics network of the Eurasian continent, and that their cultural tastes were never confined to the geographical limits of the Korean peninsula. Turning our gaze back to the Golden Dagger, when we dig into the mystery of the owner of the tomb where this dagger was excavated, we encounter an even more surprising historical hypothesis. The form of the gold crown, which symbolizes the ruling class of Silla, possesses a design language fundamentally different from the crowns of China, Goguryeo, or Baekje at the time. The tree branch decorations shaped like the Chinese character is Chu, and the antler shapes, which are typical features of Silla gold crowns, are directly connected to the caps used in the shamanistic rituals of Siberian shamans or the Tree of Life faith of the northern nomadic tribes of Eurasia. This supports the provocative yet persuasive argument that the Kim clan forces, the royalty of Silla, might be a group formed by the southward migration of northern equestrian tribes, specifically migrants of Xiongnu or Shanbei descent. If the owner of Gyeorim-ro tomb number 14 was a descendant of these northern migrants, or an envoy from the west to confirm blood ties with them, this golden dagger might have been a sacred object, symbolizing their roots, that is, nostalgia and identity for a forgotten homeland, rather than a simple import. Some perspectives in the historical academia pay attention to the fact that the Silla Kim royal family claimed to be descendants of Jin Midi, Kim Ilja, a crown prince of the Xiongnu, based on the inscription on the stele of King Munmu. The dramatic narrative that a Xiongnu prince who surrendered to the Han dynasty and received a surname flowed into the southern tip of the Korean peninsula in the vortex of history to build a new kingdom gains weight beyond a simple legend through the existence of the Gyeorim-ro golden dagger. To nomadic tribes, gold was the light of the sun and a symbol of immortality, and they shared a gold culture, where they covered their weapons and accessories with gold to show off the ruler's power. The period when Silla suddenly blossomed a gold culture and adopted the northern tomb style called stone-mounded wooden chamber tombs strangely overlaps with the period when the migration of peoples occurred on the continent. Perhaps the owner of the golden dagger settled in the strange land of Silla, but his soul still remembered the wind of the Altai and the sound of waves of the Black Sea, and he took this dagger into his grave with the desire to return to that distant homeland even in death. At the time of the excavation of Gyeorim-ro tomb number 14, the remains of the dagger's owner had already returned to the dust and were unrecognizable, but the artifacts he left behind imply that he lived a life different from that of an ordinary Silla nobleman. The fact that horse gears such as saddles, stirrups, and bits were intensively buried, rather than the pottery commonly found in general Silla tombs, shows that he was a mounted warrior who spent most of his life on horseback or a leader of a group that valued mobility. The Eurasian steppe road, also known as the steppe road, was a harsh environment where one could not advance a single step without a horse, and only those who dominated this road could seize the interests of trade connecting the east and west. The owner of the dagger might have been a mercenary captain from the west, who arrived in Silla by crossing this dangerous steppe road, or a member of the elite royal guard hired by the Silla royal family. Whoever he was, he would not have let this red, resplendent dagger, which protected his life or proved his lineage. Leave his waist for a moment, and would have tried to keep his dignity as a warrior until the final moment. The results of precise analysis of the manufacturing technique of this golden dagger using modern scientific technology guide us into an even deeper labyrinth. The soldering technology used in the process of attaching the gold granules surrounding the gems is sophisticated enough to rival today's laser welding technology, to the extent that joints can hardly be found with the naked eye. Also, the iron blade hidden inside the sheath, though rusted, was revealed to be a practical weapon, possessing both strength and elasticity, made with forging techniques that were cutting-edge iron-making technology for the time. This means that this dagger was not made simply for decoration or ceremony, but was an object possessing both beauty and lethality, equipped with the function to actually kill a person or defend oneself. The sharpness of the cold iron hidden behind beautiful gems paradoxically shows the harsh reality of the ancient world, where constant war, conquest, and the struggle for survival existed behind the splendid gold culture. We often try to understand history only through fixed borders drawn on maps and the replacement of dynasties. But the Gyeorim-ro golden dagger reminds us that history is actually made by the footsteps of people who constantly flow and move. The distance of 8,000 kilometers is far enough to take over 10 hours even by modern airplane, but to ancient people, this distance was a subject of challenge that could be overcome with curiosity, desire, and the will for survival. On that road where this dagger traveled, piercing through sandstorms of deserts and blizzards of snowy mountains, and passing numerous tribes whose languages were unintelligible, lies the sweat, blood, and stories of countless people. The golden dagger silently sleeping inside a glass display case in a museum today is not just a flashy artifact, but a living witness testifying to the hot passion of humanity that sprinted across the massive highway of civilization crossing the Eurasian continent thousands of years ago. The story held by this single small dagger is sufficient to decorate a page of world history beyond Silla history, and becomes a key that makes us reimagine the forgotten global network of the ancient world. The story the Gyeorim-ro golden dagger tells us goes beyond the mere movement of an object. It symbolizes the massive influx of technology and ideas that ancient Silla accepted. At the time, Silla was located at the eastern end of the Korean peninsula, but its gaze was open toward the vast continent of the West. And what entered through that open door was not just luxury items like gold or glass, but advanced technology for handling metals and new perspectives on the world. Silla's artisans likely made fierce efforts not just to admire the items that came from thousands of miles away, but to disassemble and analyze them, and to embody them into their own technology. The process in which gold artifacts excavated from numerous tombs in Gyeongju become more sophisticated and develop into a unique Silla style over time proves the dynamism of ancient people who converted external stimulation into creative energy. The golden dagger is an object at the very peak of that technological transfer, acting like a technological guarantee check showing that Silla was not a small country on the periphery, but a proud member of the Eurasian technological civilization sphere sharing that flow. However, this splendid golden age began to slowly lower its curtain as it passed the 6th century, which interlocks with rapid changes within Silla society and the reorganization of the situation in East Asia. As Buddhism was officially recognized and laws were promulgated through the reigns of King Beopheung and King Jinhyang, Silla transformed from the era of Maripgan, which had a strong nomadic temperament, into a centralized ancient state system. As royal power strengthened and society stabilized, the ruling class began to divert that energy toward religious devotion, building massive temples and creating Buddha statues, instead of the consumptive funeral custom of burying enormous amounts of gold in tombs to show off their authority. The trend of wild and flashy metal crafts that used to come in through the northern steppe road gave way to the sophisticated and restrained Buddhist art and Confucian etiquette introduced through the Tang dynasty, disappearing into the back alleys of history. Since the 6th century, when the Golden Dagger was buried, was exactly such a moment, like the last flame of a great transition period when the wind of the north stopped and the civilization of the continent settled. The light emitted by this dagger feels even more poignant and intense. The change in tomb styles also clearly shows this flow. The stone-mounded wooden chamber tomb where the Golden Dagger was found involves piling a massive heap of stones on flat ground, which structurally has a deep connection to the Kurgan tombs of northern nomadic tribes like the Scythians or Xiongnu. However, after the mid-6th century, Silla's tombs changed to stone chamber tombs with horizontal entrances built on hill slopes, which allowed for additional burials and rituals, following the typical sedentary civilization style of the Korean peninsula and China. Amidst these changes, the flashy golden daggers and Western-style treasures that once decorated the waists of kings and nobles no longer entered the tombs, and gradually became forgotten in people's memories as well. The Gyeorim-ro Golden Dagger is a lucky artifact preserved underground like a time capsule, without being swept away by the waves of the changing era, as the last evidence of the days when Silla was most open and international, and simultaneously most wild. If this dagger had not been buried in the tomb and had been passed down to later generations, it is highly likely that it would have been melted down to become another object during chaotic wars or damaged by someone who did not recognize its value. So the darkness of 1,500 years was rather the safest safe that protected this dagger. The thrill we feel looking at this golden dagger today stems from the intellectual shock that the stereotypes we vaguely held, such as single ethnic nation or hermit kingdom, are shattered to pieces. The ruling class of Silla might have been people with a much more cosmopolitan sense than us today, who loved Roman glass, sat on Central Asian carpets, and lived surrounded by bodyguards with Western faces. The city of Gyeongju was not the eastern terminus of the Silk Road, but a massive hub of logistics and culture in Northeast Asia, where the steppe road and sea route met and connected again to the Japanese archipelago. What this single small dagger eloquently speaks of is the enterprising spirit of our ancestors who reached out toward the open sea and vast continent, not an isolated peninsula, and the reality of a global network. Through this artifact, we confirm that the world 1,500 years ago was as closely connected as modern globalization, and realize how great a legacy the exchange of civilizations created by human desire and curiosity can leave behind. In each red garnet decorating the surface of the dagger, the breath of the artisan sweating in a workshop in the Black Sea, the tears of the merchant missing his hometown while looking at the desert night sky, and the heartbeat of the Silla general who traversed the battlefield with this dagger at his waist are imbued. It is not merely a cold lump of metal, but a crystallization of hot history where countless human lives and deaths, meetings and partings are condensed. The golden dagger keeping eternal silence under the museum lights is throwing a heavy question at us: how far do your roots reach? And the answer to that question is already melted into this red and resplendent light that connects Rome and Silla, beyond the distance of 8,000 kilometers, and connects the past and the present. The Gyeorim-ro Golden Dagger proves in the most beautiful and shocking way the fact that history does not exist only as recorded text, but gains vivid breath only when objects buried in the soil awaken and speak to us. Now, when we visit Gyeongju, we should not view it merely as a quiet city where old tombs are gathered. Beneath each of those mounds sleep stories of distant foreign lands we could not even imagine, and grand narratives of adventure crossing the continent. If you walk through Daerungwon in Gyeongju on a windy day, you might hear the sound of horses' hooves galloping across the Eurasian steppes 1,500 years ago, and the unfamiliar songs of strangers within the sound of the wind brushing past your ears. This miraculous treasure discovered in the small and humble tomb of Gyeorim-ro tomb number 14 will remain as an eternal signpost reconnecting the links of forgotten history and guiding us into a wider world and deeper time. The fact that the Golden Dagger of Rome saw the light again from the soil of Silla was not a coincidence, but perhaps an inevitability created by the desperate wish of ancient people who hoped that their descendants would someday remember their true selves. Our journey began at a small drainage construction site in Gyeongju, but its end concludes with a grand epic encompassing the entire Eurasian continent. This small 36-centimeter dagger transcended physical size to become a massive bridge connecting East and West, ancient and modern, and human to human. Many parts of history's riddles remain unsolved, but that very unknowability becomes the driving force that breathes endless imagination into us and makes us explore the past. The red light of the Golden Dagger will never be extinguished, and will stay by our side, testifying to the great journey of humanity transcending time and space. With this, we conclude the story of the mystery of 8,000 kilometers erased from history books, the Golden Dagger of Silla.